So today feedback loops. So first, routing in Ableton and how to get a feedback loop going. So what we're gonna need is two or three. I would recommend always having three different audio channels and one return track. Return track is Command Alt T, and I would recommend you do this in the session view and not in the arrangement view because it's a bit easier to set up the routings and the sends here. I mean, you can do it in the session view, but I mean in the arrangement view, but I prefer working here. Like the workflow is just easier, I would say. Also, let me just make everything bigger. Okay. So what we want to have is that here we want an impulse, some kind of impulse that starts the feedback loop. And then we want our feedback loop to be going between the second audio and the return track. And then we want the third audio to use as a mix to actually control the volume of our feedback loop. Because the problem with feedback loops is that when you change the volume, you actually change what the feedback loop is. Like you change, you might kill it if it's too low, or if it's too loud, it's gonna change the timbre. So maybe we just like start naming stuff. So maybe we name this impulse. If you want to do this, so you can do it. If not, here I call this feedback. With this, I'll just call mix. So we want our impulse. Maybe I'll just take like a hi-hat or something. Anything percussive to start our. And I will also use the keyboard mappings. If you press Command K, you turn this keyboard mapping on. I'm just gonna do it that whenever I press 1 on my keyboard, it's gonna turn this, like play this sample. Just so because I'll have to do that a lot throughout. And now, so we want our impulse to go to our return track because we can do that with the send. So if you turn your send up, you can see that now our audio is going to our return tracks. And now we want the return. Oh, first, stop doing anything. I'm sorry, I forgot. But you need the limiter. This is very important because you can really break your speakers. And I want you to put it on literally everything, like on the first track, the second track, the third track, the return track, and on the master, like the main track. Because we can really get like maximum. I mean, it wouldn't break, like it might break your equipment. I think they're pretty safe after, like at this point in technology, but it will be very annoying to hear, especially if you're using headphones. So please use limiters everywhere. Um, Everyone has limiters. Safety first, yeah. Okay. So now I want my return track to be sending not to the main, but to my feedback track. So now the sound is going from this to this to this. And now I can even send this one back to the limiter. And there you get the. So now I should be getting. Of course, I need to set this to in. I turn my volume a bit up. Yeah, we're getting there. Ta-da. So you need a certain amount of volume to get it going. Under that threshold, it wouldn't start oscillating. And now you can see that I have my feedback loop happening here. So the audio is just now bouncing between this return track and this feedback track extremely quickly. and it's just creating this buzz. Now, if I change the volume, if like this was too loud, and if I change it, it just dies because the audio is not bouncing anymore between the two channels. That's why I would send this not to the main, but actually to the mix channel. So if I have my feedback loop here, I can change its volume from here, from the third track, without actually affecting the feedback loop. I mean, if you're setting up one feedback loop, then it doesn't matter because you can just use the master as a volume control. But once you start setting more feedback loops, then it becomes really handy to have multiple volume controls for each feedback loop. No, I don't know. What I was playing with yesterday was shifter, then I had reverb will be very handy to solve a problem that we will have in the, which is that a lot of the times just one channel dies left or right, and then the way to fix it is usually just to like spit a little bit of reverb just for a little second, and then it like mixes the stereo felt. So this is like how I solve it. You can also just mono the sound with a utility or something, but then you kind of maybe lose a bit more of the. This makes it a little bit more fluffy. Now my reverb is off, of course, and maybe an EQ. And I had something really interesting happen, but I couldn't recreate it. I don't know how I did it. But it was. You see, now it died again. Yeah, the thing with the shifter that a lot of the time it just kills the sound. Like it doesn't let it start at all. So I just usually just turn it off and then turn it back in. And here you have like your basic, your window control. But the cool thing with the shifter is that you have a delay and feedback built in inside already.
So beat repeat is working.
Beat repeat. Oh, actually, I've never tried that. So you kind of like built a looper like this with your built-in delay.
You always throw the effects into the feedback channel, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can throw them in the return track. I think it would work the same. This is nice. And after like a while, especially if you have really high feedback here, like I used to like make some like adjustments, then I would go like cook dinner or something, and then come back and it's like completely different place. Like it just never stays in the same place. And so like yeah, I made a piece actually with this where the impulse was just digital impulse, where it's like one sample. Like I went to a sample here and I literally like zoomed in and cropped one point. So like like It's basically doesn't have a sound. It's just your speakers doing this tripping for a bit. And just like out of it, because everything now that you're hearing is just like internal stuff happening between the things. Yeah, I mean, usually percussive sounds are helpful for like to trigger it very fast, but it's kind of irrelevant, really. What you can kind of like use it as an effect is to have your sound playing at the same time as it's going through a feedback loop as a like dry wet effect. But I cannot promise you it will have so much relation to the like it really gets distorted completely very good. And as you can see here, like one of my channels are being very loud and one of them is starting to die. So that's why I usually have a reverb to just like kind of win, but now it's actually not, but sometimes it dies completely. And you can kind of like never expect what really happens. It's always at some point you start of like getting a sense, oh, I have this sound now. If I change this, it might do this to the sound. But like to really know what's gonna happen is, but usually lower decay times means higher pitch, lower window times means higher pitch, and the opposite, of course. And of course, lower pitch means lower pitch. And look, now you thought it was dead, like there was literally no audio, and it just backlight because the thing is, like it's especially with the delay and feedback that happens here, it kind of stops caring where the audio stops. Like so many times, I look at my spectrum, and like at 5 hertz, everything is happening. Somewhere like below the audible range by so much. And this I find very interesting because usually what I would do once I like set up my feedback loop, all the routing, I would go into arrangement view and I would just, in my mix channel, I would just start recording. So I just have the audio of what's happening. And then I would take these very low pitch sounds which are below the audible range, and then after they're recorded, I pitch them up to see what's actually was going to there. Or like to get, if you're like working on, I don't know, like much higher than 48K, like 96K, then you can also get the content that happened at like, I don't know, like 33,000 hertz, and then pitch it down and see how that sounded if it's pitched down. The cool thing about this is that changing your buffer size and your sample rate actually changes the sound because the feedback loop is made of how fast the sound is going in the processing. So we can try, I think it was buffer size that changes the pitch. So maybe let me like just have a very normal, I don't know if this is gonna work really, because now we're just taking a frequency out, but let's see if that works. Like, yeah, so changing your buffer size actually changes what's gonna happen. And also, I think sample rate, which it should actually change. Or is it just the buffer size? I mean, we hear it, buffer size for sure. Yeah, but usually changing stuff that don't change your sound in your DAW in an audible way become audible. And now you can see that my left channel is completely dead. There is nothing. So here you can also, like, if you encounter this problem, you can also, I think, add a utility. I don't know, I just got the idea that you can add a utility and just like mono. So you have the information on both, and then just remove the mono and then they stick, basically.
How do you make the spectrum look so big?
There is like a little arrow here that you just press. It is getting annoying, sorry. But I just want to try to mess a little bit with the reverb here.
If I adjust
Yeah, I mean, I wanted you to maybe make, I mean, if you want to record it, of course, but I wanted to see if we can do something that is to connect two feedback loops together. Um, I mean, either by sound. Actually, we can also do it by sound, which could be interesting. Which is like if you want to send your input of the second feedback loop to the first one to affect how it's doing its sound, then you can also do that. But for now, I'm just gonna make it a bit simple. So I'll just call this feedback 2, and this I'll call mix 2, and then I'll just do the same setup real quick. This goes to B now. Then this one goes to feedback 2, and this one goes to mix 2. And of course, I want my impulse to go to all of them, but I don't need this anymore because if I have my first feedback working already, which it's not right now. Ah, it's coming back to life. It's so dead. Come on, push harder. There it is. That's so funny. Thank you. Now I can actually just send. Oh wait, I did forget the most important thing, which is the limited again. Speakers. Okay, now we have limiters everywhere. Now I can just send this thing to B also, and it will start triggering the other feedback loop. Or also you can here enable all sends if you right click on the sends of the send channels, because usually they're grayed out. But now what you can do is actually create the mini feedback loop inside of itself by like having a send to itself also. Because now, like, let's say here I just have this normal thing happening. I can also have a send to itself also. And this will change how my feedback loop is going. Like, oh, nice interval now. Wow, that's pretty. And as you can see that, so the difference in pitch between a feedback loop going between two tracks and itself is around the major 6 here. A bit too high of a major 6. Yeah, this guy again. Okay, so now that I have this feedback loop, I can do something in two different ways. First, let me do another one. I'll honestly be a bit lazy and just copy this thing. Just as demonstration, it's here. But what I wanted to try, I have this idea that we can use this Max for Live. Is it actually in Ableton included? Can you someone search? It's called Another Input. Maybe it's in some of the packs. Show the browser. I know, I think routing and modulating. It is in one of the packs actually. That seems pretty useful. But what I was thinking is that now that we have two feedback loops, is that maybe I can start this from scratch again. So now I'm in my second feedback loop, which for me looks identical to my first one. And I will just take this another input that we just got. I will put it here, and I will, oops, I will group it so I have a rack, and I will create a chain that is empty, where my audio can pass through normally.
On the second feedback you put, right?
Or you can put it on the first one, but it doesn't matter really. But it's just on one of the feedback tracks, and then I will turn that signal off. Like I will turn the chain off where it has the max for life and other inputs. And then I will choose my input to be the other feedback track, which is feedback 1 for my bass. So now you see my feedback 2 is receiving in like a dead channel the signal from my feedback 1. And now what I can do, for an example, I can filter this.
So you just look out the another input, then create another chain.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
And then turned off the another input, because I don't want. Yeah, I don't just want my 2 feedback loops to be coming out of the same feedback loop.
What's the name of the original another input?
Another input, yeah. I just airdropped you it, or no? Yeah. And then what you can do is that you can maybe filter this sound. Maybe actually let me add an EQ rate instead, so we also have, so we can see a little bit what's happening. So what you can do is that you can filter the signal that we're not even listening to. Maybe let's say I only want the high frequencies, yeah? So everything above here. And then what I would do is add an envelope follower. This one. And now what's happening is that I'm getting the signal from my first feedback loop, and it's going through a dead chain into an envelope follower, and it's getting filtered. So now what I can do basically here, I'm having like very low noise now, low volume. Maybe let me also listen to what's going on. That's actually nice sub bass. When I'm still recording since like 2 hours. So let me just have anything here that is a bit higher pitch. And now you can see that in my other one, they're starting to get some. Of course, you need to tune the gain to be kind of picking up on this. And now what I can do is that I can map. I mean, this is too much. And probably I would set this to be a little bit smoother, like maybe around 20%, a bit more even. And then I can map this to something else. For example, let's have it not be modulating. To the delay time of the second feedback loop. And now my second feedback loop should be, wait, did I set this right? Right 2, right in. On. What am I doing wrong here? Sorry. So now you see it's like capped. It's very high. But now if in my first feedback loop I somehow make this very filtered, this means that very soon this thing will. Okay, now it's working. Because it was taking the input of both channels somehow, which I find interesting. I don't know why that happened. But the fact is so nice. This I'm gonna record. digital forests. I was trying to figure out what was the problem is, and I tried to like ban the audio from coming here because what was happening is that even though this was set to receive the only the feedback signal, I found out that it was receiving both signals. Like it was still getting signal from the feedback loop that it's in, which is feedback 2. So first I did set it to take from the mix to avoid any problems. I also like turned it off and turned the volume all the way down of that rack. And also in your chain, just set this to be somewhere else. So now it's only selecting this chain. Have you found, you know, the chain? Like this is just, I did all the measures that would make this thing not produce volume or receive audio. So I just like drag the chain for this one away, and that actually solved it, I think. And now we can try that if our first feedback turns on. Let's see what will happen. Of course, this is kind of like, I wanted to show you how to do this in a more pretty way, because I mean now obviously we're seeing that this hasn't become very pretty, but this envelope follower could also be on your other feedback track. The main reason I told you about this thing, why I thought this might be interesting,
Just so that we see it all on the same track.
is that you sync your envelope follower on the same track. Because the idea is that this envelope follower is going to take information from here and modulate something here. So instead, the idea is to like have this thing tell me, okay, what's happening in that channel, and then I can just so I stay in the same channel while working. So this was my like kind of workflow idea, but and now it's working. I feel like now I got it to work. So I just set my second feedback loop to start, and now you can see, okay, I'm getting information here, but none of it is above this threshold. So now I can, and you can see I'm starting to have some changes here, and these changes are changing my delay time, which is changing now my bird sounds basically. And now the more I change this feedback loop, see now my birds are tripping. Now let me try something real stupid, which is I will turn this off for a second, copy it, turn it on, then I'll also put it in the same one. Like on the first one basically, and set the input to be from the second one now. Have it pre-FX, and also have my chain the same way. Now I'll turn it on. Now I'll map this maybe also to the same thing. Let's see what happens. No, don't die. Okay, it's working. It's much more chaotic than it usually is. And I mean now, like, you only map one thing. In envelope follower, you can map up to 8 things. And of course, you can, like, here, instead of just doing this, I would just basically duplicate this and maybe take different snippets of the sound. So instead of this I would just take maybe the very lows in a different audio channel. So now, whenever there's a lot of low frequency content, something is modulating in the feedback loop. Whenever there's like, you can go also, you can have very limited band passes that, oh, whenever this frequency is hit, something is happening in that place. Or maybe let's do it with something more simple. So let's say you have an LFO that has like a shape that you like. Let's just put it after the envelope follower. And it's like maybe like really quick and it's changing, I don't know, like the amount of how much it's modulating. And maybe also the rate, like something that we can hear. Where are the settings feedback? So let me just turn this off for a second. So now this is changing really quickly. But what we want is that this LFO doesn't turn on unless there is high quality, high content, high frequency content. So I just map this to here. So this is now so let's see. So again we have our bird. And I see it's on. But once it's off, but now it's like very, very slow. Probably not make it still on. Oh, this too needs to be absolutely zero then. Yeah, maybe envelope follower is then not the best. The problem is that this is triggering this on very, very early. How can we work around this? Maybe if I instead map this to this thing and map this thing to macro 1. Huh? See you. See now I think I got something working. Is it turning on at some point? This needs to be. Yeah, so now you can set it this way that only after the sound crosses the middle point, this LFO turns on. So let's hear how this sounds. Of course, this is not mapped to anything. Maybe I'll also actually map it to. Can I turn it on? I'll map it to the window so I have more lower pitch. Now here, if I start getting yeah. So sorry, that's very annoying to listen to, but I think the idea is working now.